So really quick before we get started on this video, Dean and I talk about China and the Bitcoin mining that's going on there, and it's a really important topic. But I wanted to define what Bitcoin mining is. Bitcoin mining is a process. There's miners on the network. That's just their name. You can think of it as miners in the coal mine. They're out trying to make something happen for Bitcoin. It's a really interesting metaphor that they chose for Bitcoin. It's a really interesting process, but without getting into all the technical details of it, it's literally just mathematical puzzles that they have really sophisticated computers working on. And those mathematical puzzles get more complex as there's more miners that join the network to mine. So it becomes harder and harder and harder to solve those puzzles. But when they do solve those puzzles, it actually helps a Bitcoin transaction process. And as a reward of that, they're given Bitcoin. It's not not necessarily free for them to do that. It's a very, very expensive, time-consuming process, and you have to be the first one to literally solve the puzzle to get the Bitcoin. So that's my understanding of it. I hope that helps you guys out in terms of watching this video so it makes sense. It's just the process that Bitcoin goes through. A lot of the other alternative coins, they do not go through Bitcoin, or they do not go through mining. So just wanted to give you the heads up before the video started.
So hey, Dean, I don't know if you heard about this thing about the China crackdown on Bitcoin mining. Have you heard anything about that?
I actually haven't heard anything about that. I mean, really briefly, I saw a headline and I didn't really understand it because, yeah, why don't you, I mean, right before that is when they had the power outage, right, in China.
Yeah,
So I guess this is a separate thing.
Yeah, it seems like this is a separate thing, or maybe they did it as kind of preemptive to see what it would do. So I don't know if it's the same part of China or a different part of China, but you've heard of Mongolia, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Inner Mongolia region, they plan to ban new cryptocurrency mining projects and actually shut down existing activity. They're doing this because they need to start conserving energy. So this thing's consuming a bunch of energy, and I'm like, well, how much energy could it be actually consuming? Because they talk about Bitcoin mining being pretty energy intensive, right? I'm sure you've heard that.
Yeah.
You know, they actually have specialized PCs, you know, these A6 level PCs that all they do is their one function in life is to mine Bitcoin, right? And I think you have to have like a dozen of them if you actually want to be competitive in this space. So that's a lot of energy, I think, going into these computers. In fact, I found some statistics on it, and you're going to be blown away. So Bitcoin actually consumes about 129 terawatt hours per year. That's actually more energy than entire countries like Argentina and the Ukraine consume in a year.
Well, I do hear this all the time with the media talking about how much energy Bitcoin consumes. And I think there's no doubt that it does consume quite a bit of energy to do the mining. What I never hear is a comparison to how much the current financial system uses energy. And I mean, hitting that, you know, Biden's printer button on all those trillions, that's got to suck up some energy, right? Do they have to do they have to press enter for each dollar? Because that could really add up a lot.
Well, I could, you know, I mean, that's actually a really good point. So I mean, Biden's finger must be pretty stressed out at this point, right?
Yeah, bleeding.
So, oh, another dollar. I don't know if he does it one at a time, like you said, or if it's, you know, it's kind of hilarious. So anyhow, this Inner Mongolia place, it accounts for about 8% of all the Bitcoin mining globally. And China accounts for 65% of the global Bitcoin mining. So China is doing almost all of the Bitcoin mining. And, you know, I don't know if you know where the United States is in the picture, but I was surprised to learn that only 7.2% was coming out of the United States. So, yeah, isn't it?
And is that okay? I mean, again, just hearing the headline and what you're telling me now, I sort of would make the leap to think that it's because China subsidizes its energy, and it's perfectly willing to have dirty energy more than the United States. So I'm guessing the United States energy costs more in comparison to China. Is that
Yeah.
is that right?
Well, this is the thing I know, and that's actually a really good point, is that Bitcoin mining travels and goes to the cheapest places of energy in the world.
That makes
So
sense.
yeah, I think that fills your what you were just saying. I think that fulfills that pretty well, because that's generally where I understand that the Bitcoin mining is taking place. So the folks that are doing it in the United States are at a serious disadvantage unless they have some kind of solar or alternative power source where they're not paying for it. But could you imagine the solar or wind fields that you would need to power all these Bitcoin mining machines? It'd be enormous.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and I guess that's why when I saw the headline, and I didn't dig into it, but just at first glance of that headline, I was confused by it because I was like, I thought China, well, first of all, I know that they want to, in any way they can, dominate Bitcoin. So for them to scale that back, really confused me. So what do you think that's about?
I just think that they're probably having issues with energy and trying to supply all of their customers with energy when you have a massive amount of energy going
Ah,
to Bitcoin mining. I mean,
yeah,
so that
yeah, that might make sense. Yeah.
yeah, so I've got some opinions about this long term and short term, and I wanted to kind of share those with you and see what your thoughts are. So, will this have an impact on the Bitcoin price? Because remember what happened before when the power shut down? It was a few weeks ago, the power shut down. I think it was
Yeah.
almost in the same territory, and all of a sudden the prices just dropped like a rock
Yeah.
on Bitcoin. So, I'm wondering, if they crack down on this, will the prices fall through the floor again? Or will it have the opposite effect? Will it actually limit supply and there's going to be less supply coming out, kind of like oil, right? You know, when they shut off the oil fields in Saudi Arabia, it causes the prices to go up. So will this have the same kind of effect on Bitcoin?
Wow, that's really interesting. I mean, if it was going to be a supply issue and lower supply would cause the price to go up, why did the price go down when they shut the servers down?
I actually don't have an answer for that. And I was just kind of thinking, you know, I guess it could go either way. And I hate to say that because I want to have a specific opinion on it. My brain is telling me that in this case, short term, I think the prices are going to go up. There might be a dip for a minute, but I think the longer term effect of that is going to be a price increase. Because, and here's the other thing, I think what's going to happen is the mining starts getting shut down in China. We're just going to shift the problem to other parts of the world, right? And other people are going to say, oh, I finally have the opportunity. There's open space for more miners, and people in different parts of the world are going to be able to take advantage of that. So why are they going to do that? Of course, because they're going to be able to profit from that. You know, that's what the miners in China are hopefully doing, you know, for themselves. But this is going to be a big change if China really does this. I'm actually kind of surprised China's going to do this because of the reasons we talked about earlier. Um, so
Yeah,
then it just leaves.
it's a little bit of a wild card with China, right? They have a lot of influence over it, and we don't exactly know what their policy is. So, yeah, it's going to be something to definitely keep our eye on.
So I want to ask you one more question before we wrap up. There is a thought in my head for long term around Bitcoin and this mining component, right? I mean, we haven't really defined mining as for our audience, but we'll get into that in a moment. But in the long term, if the mining is uh, is so energy intensive, this isn't really good for the environment. And I hate to say that, but I think this is terrible for the environment. And most of the alternative coins don't have an intense mining component like Bitcoin. So this is almost kind of like long term. I could see Bitcoin really getting hurt by this as people start saying this is not a green technology. This is not a thing that we should be doing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, it's a pretty complex question, and again, what's the correlation to our current financial system? So clearly, Bitcoin does use a lot of energy, and and like you said, a lot of the other uh, crypto coins, cryptocurrencies don't have the mining component, but that's also kind of why Bitcoin is the big dog because it's maybe, that model might not be really used again in a big way. And that's what makes it scarce. And that may be the reason it's going to be considered an alternative to gold. I mean, without that component, you really don't get there. You don't get to that model.